The Phillies were out west after a sweep of the Yankees over the weekend. They took on the Dodgers last night, had a lead early in that game. Spencer Howard got off to a good start, and then putt, ran out of gas, as usual. Is that something that we can pencil in every time he starts now, Frank? Is this the Spencer Howard thing? He gives you 3-4 innings, and that's all we should be expecting from your top pitching prospect?
Yeah, they need more than that. I think that's pretty clear. The Phillies absolutely, if you're going to be in the starting rotation, if you're going to be taking up that spot on the roster as a starting pitcher, you need to go more than 3+ and start flaming out. Because really, last night he started really running out of gas kind of in the 4th inning, got through it, came out for the 5th, home run, bye.
Yep, threw 67 pitches last night, and that was all he had, really. I mean, you looked at it, he was kind of out of gas. He was putting along in the 4th in that game last night. He ends up giving up just 2 hits. He had 4 strikeouts, but he gives up 3 runs and 2 homers. So I guess you got to, ask yourself, is the right move to continue pitching him in the starting rotation?
Well, that's something they got to figure out. So last night, it was very, very clear that they kind of knew his limitations, which is why they called up Bailey Fulter. And Fulter, by the way, did a tremendous job at giving them 3 innings out of the bullpen. That was sort of the role that Ranger Suarez used to have before he sort of promoted himself out of it. But you can't take up 2 spots on the roster for every single start. At some point, that's going to catch up with the Phillies. Right now, it kind of is working okay because the Phillies are having so many days off, right? So they're in the stretch. They're off again on Thursday, then they're off again on Monday, then they're off again the next Thursday. So you can kind of get away with that right now when you don't have a whole lot of games at once because your bullpen won't be overtaxed. But sustainably for the rest of the season, there's something that they got to do about that because it's just not going to work.
Nope, it won't. And Joe Vaughn wants to know in the mailbag, how do you think the Phillies address Howard's spot in the rotation? Do they go back to the minors to find someone? Do they have to acquire someone in a trade? If you're Dave Dombrowski, do they think they can stretch him out like as this goes on, or is this what he is right now?
So I think that's going to be determined by how he does this month and into next month. Maybe around the All-Star break, as you get closer to the trade deadline, you start trying to figure this out a little bit. Again, not sustainable 2 people for 1 rotation spot. So the Phillies are going to have to do something. The rested bullpen, they can hang out on this for a little while, but if you look down at the end of the month, the Phillies have a doubleheader against the Mets, and then they play every other day until the All-Star break in July. So that stretch is going to be critical that they get some innings out of their starting pitchers because your bullpen will just be way too exhausted. So they're going to have to make a decision. Howard, I guess long-term, if this is not something he can do, then you start asking the question of, did you try to make him a valuable reliever? Because let's face it, first few innings each time out, he's looking pretty good. Mm-hmm. He just doesn't have the stamina. But then you got to ask the question: will he have the stamina to come back?
How's that possible? Why doesn't he have the stamina? Why is he a grown man, top level pitcher, and he doesn't have the ability to go past 4 innings? Why is that?
That I can't tell you. Is something wrong? I mean, hopefully nothing is wrong. Let's face it, he hasn't pitched a lot the last couple of years, right? He's never pitched more than like 170 innings in any. I think that maybe not even that, but since he's been in the organization, he has not pitched a full minor league season, and that really has perhaps kind of set him back. Is it something he can grow out of? Maybe, but the fact, I'll just kind of say this: did they baby him too much? All worried about protecting his precious arm. Did they make him unable to throw? I remember back in the day, Cliff Lee used to say the key to longevity is to throw more. Well, if you're Spencer Howard and they're limiting every little inning because they're afraid that you're going to hit some sort of magic number and flame out, well, maybe he's never really built up the arm strength to go for a season.
Frank Klose, our Phillies mailbag. All right, let's take a look at something else. Oh, by the way, Bailey Fulter, who is he? Is he a guy that is in? I mean, where'd he come from? What's his role? What does he project as?
So Bailey Fulter, he was from the system. He is a Phillies draft pick. You didn't really hear much about him over the last couple of years, of course, because there was no minor league season last year. So at AAA Lehigh Valley, he really did impress when he was down there in the minor leagues. If you look at his numbers at AAA, he was 2-0 with a 1.82 ERA. He started 6 games for the Iron Pigs, and then the 7th appearance came out of the bullpen because it seemed like the Phillies were primed to call him up for a role like that. But yeah, he's somebody who pitched pretty well in 2019 at AA. Again, he's kind of one of those wild cards, like we talked before about Nick Maton and Luke Williams. You didn't see their 2020, so you don't totally know what you get. But right now, he's looking pretty good at AAA. He's somebody I can see maybe the Phillies move him up and down because he's certainly got the minor league options depending on how the roster is constructed. And maybe he's somebody who could start for them down the line. Who knows? But they don't seem to be going that route just yet. It looks like they want him to be a lefty out of the pen that can give him a few innings. At least for now, he came up as the piggyback to Spencer Howard. But we'll see where it goes. I mean, let's face it. If you have success on the mound, you're going to stick around, right? Like Ranger Suarez, we just mentioned, right? He finally battled back after injuries and all kinds of other issues. He's pitching himself into a permanent spot in the bullpen, so he'll have that opportunity as well.
All right, let's ask this question, and I don't know why anybody would want to know this. Andrew, this scares me. What's the future for Matt Moore, David Hale, and Chase Anderson? Those were the 2 veteran guys they brought in to kind of be a part of the back end. Neither one of them is really helping out much. Dave Hale, we know, they traded for him last year, and he has really been a disappointment.
Yeah, well, I think Andrew is asking because he kind of sees those 3 as sort of a burden on the roster. And let's face it, without the 3 of them pitching lately, the Phillies have done okay. David Hale of the 3, I think he's probably the weakest link of the 3. When you look at somebody who's making the least amount of money, somebody who is perhaps the most expendable of the 3, I can see that the clock is ticking on some of these guys, especially as the Bailey Fulters and the Ranger Suarezes come up and basically stake their claim to a spot in the Phillies bullpen. So I think David Hale, if anybody, is going to be the one who kind of loses his job. I mean, he's been scored upon on 8 of his 14 outings, and there are a couple other times, big spots, like you think to that Chase Anderson start in Dunedin with all the misplays in the outfield, and David Hale comes in and all of a sudden gives up 2 of the inherited runners he faced. So I think he's kind of on the short leash. The bullpen's getting kind of crowded as these other arms emerge. And at some point, they're going to make a decision. Hale, I think if you remove him from your 40-man roster, you can create an opportunity for somebody else. So I think he's the first one to go. Anderson and Moore, I think they're going to stick around a while. They're making more money. I mean, that does factor into it, let's be honest. But it looks like Matt Moore in his rehab starts at AAA. It looks like the Phillies are stretching him out to be a starter. Now, does that mean he sticks around in the rotation to maybe replace Spencer Howard, like we were just saying? Or that with that stretch coming up, the Phillies need an extra starter when they start getting into the double headers. So maybe Matt Moore comes up to start a little bit. They need somebody, right? And then if you're down another starter somehow, you might need Chase Anderson to make some starts too. So they got to find a way to juggle those guys. Right now, we don't know where Chase Anderson is at. He's on the COVID injured list. We have no information as to the nature of that. He went on and then he immediately came off and then went right back onto the COVID list. So hopefully nothing major is wrong there. But it just seems like every time it looks like you're at a roster crunch, somebody gets hurt or something happens, so they've happened to have the roster spot. But eventually that's not going to happen. But I think of those 3, David Hale is the one that's most likely to go.
All right, the closing spot. A lot of conversation about this after Neris coughed up another one on Saturday.
And nobody asked me a question. I thought for sure I would get a closer question.
Well, you kind of did. I mean, Neftali Feliz is a closer. He once was. Okay. He's been killing it down at AAA. I mean, because the closer up here has been so bad. I don't want to say so bad. I don't think that's fair. But it's like Groundhog's Day. He pitches well, but I don't think you can trust him in the biggest of big moments. But I don't know. Isn't that the closer in baseball today? Which closers do you trust? 2?
Right. So I actually looked it up because immediately nobody comes to mind right now as sort of the dominant lockdown closer in Major League Baseball, right? I mean, the names of the past that are still around, I guess Aroldis Chapman's been decent, having some decent numbers. He's got 12 saves, 2 blown saves. Mark Melancon, the guy that just never seems to go away. Mark Melancon has 19 saves and a .64 ERA. Craig Kimbrell, somebody who was the Cubs almost seemed ready to give up on last year. He's got 18 saves and a 0.66 ERA. And then out of nowhere, Alex Reyes for the Cardinals. He's 17 saves, 0.84 ERA. So of course, Josh Hader is probably a name that's been around. But other than Josh Hader, nobody's really at that lockdown level like we've seen before. I mean, Kenley Jansen's still around, but he's not infallible anymore. It feels like the era of the lockdown closer is just not with us anymore. So then the question becomes: Is Neris okay? I mean, he's got 4 blown saves so far, 3.16 ERA. He's been okay. I don't think he's been totally horrible. Now, in the course of a season, even back in the day, the Billy Wagner types, they might blow 7 in a season. So you're not halfway done the season yet per se, but he could end up about right. I mean, you have a bad week and you're a closer like Neris. If you blow a couple saves and it feels like the world is collapsing around you, but let's face it. I mean, over the course of the season, there's going to be about 7-ish,
right?
And they could probably handle 8. And the Phillies have won some of his blown saves at least, right? So, it's not the end of the world. It's good that Archie Bradley is back and looking better, but I really don't think it's the end of the world in terms of that. Now, I was personally advocating that they claim Brad Hand this offseason. He's been doing okay for the Nationals, 2 blown saves and 12 saves, but I think this is something they're just gonna have to roll with. I don't think it's as bad as I think a lot of people are making it out to be, but there's definitely room for improvement.
Yeah, I mean, I agree. I mean, I hear people all the time yelling and screaming about Neris. They just don't have another option. And, 1.13 whip. I mean, look, he's going to blow saves. I get it. It's frustrating. And part of it's because he's blown saves in the past, I think, that carries over. If this was just him this year, you'd be, okay, he's blowing a save. That happens. But because he's had so many failures in the past, I think that kind of predetermines that we don't want him. But they don't have another option.
Yeah, and let's remember he was very, very good in 2019. Last year, kind of so-so. But I'm willing to throw out last year on almost everybody because it was such a small sample size and such a strange year. But yeah, truth be told, he is still rather reliable. Not the end of the world. Could he be better? Yes, but if you take him out of the closer's role, he's going to have to pitch in your 7th inning, and that's just as important an inning anyway.
All right, so tell us about Feliz.
So Neftali Feliz, all right. So former closer in Major League Baseball. He's actually had a pretty remarkable start in AAA. When the Phillies signed him as a non-roster invitee to spring training, veteran guy. We've seen a number of them come through over the years, but Feliz had not pitched in the majors in a couple seasons. So he didn't really pitch much in the Grapefruit League. He only made 3 appearances at the back end and really did not get a chance to claim a spot on the Phillies roster. But the roster issues are going to be what matters for him. I mean, I haven't personally got to see him pitch down at AAA. I don't know how he looks, but the numbers look good in his first 12 appearances. He's got a 1.59 ERA and 4 saves down there and a 2-1 record. So he's looking pretty good, but those 40-man roster spots, like I just said, I'm saying over and over again, they're kind of at a point where they're pretty valuable right now. So it would probably take somebody like David Hale getting released or an unfortunate injury that's long-term for somebody that lands them on the 60-day IL for you to really find some space for somebody like him.
How is it possible that the Phillies have 40 guys in their organization that they deem unmovable? This team's averages can be. I mean, I don't get it.
That's a good point.
But on the 40-man, get him off.
I think the problem just is with some of the prospects, you don't necessarily want to give up on them. And, the Phillies were very, very thin at the position player side of things. And most of their 40-man roster has been on pitchers. A lot of those pitchers aren't ready to come up yet. You're not going to cut someone like Adonis Medina or Mauricio Llovera. Some of these younger Francisco Morales, right? Christopher Sanchez is somebody who came up for a cup of coffee. Arms like that, you don't want to necessarily lose them unless you absolutely have to. And so I think you want to hang on to as much pitching as possible. And I get that, but it's going to take something else opening up, like a David Hale release, for them to even consider something like that. But they might, the Phillies are still kind of walking a tightrope for position players. If they acquire somebody who's on the position player side, they got to find a place for him too. So I think the roster crunch will define that. And the other thing too is they have guys like Enyel De Los Santos they can bring up and down. If you bring Feliz up to the major league roster, then you don't have the option to send him right back down. So because of his veteran status. So So I think I wouldn't rule out calling him up. Maybe you'll get a little bit more of a sample size, but so far so good.
Well, I got Chase Anderson, Brandon Kintzler, Matt Moore that don't need a roster spot. I don't mind Mickey Moniak. I don't need him on my 40-man any longer. I guarantee you no one's picking him up either. So have fun with that.
Yeah, somebody would.
Debate. And guess what? If they want him, they can have him. That's where
I think somebody would claim Moniak as, the first overall pick status is going to make him hang around no matter what. But you're right. But I don't think those types of guys they're not going to cut the $4 million for Moore, $3 million for Anderson, and they're not going to cut. I mean, David Hale might be it, but I think if you're going to bring somebody like Feliz up, you want to make sure that there's a path that they don't need to go cut him the next week. You always want to retain as much pitching as possible. I think that's true of any organization.
All right, Frank Klose, the Phillies mailbag. He'll be back on Tuesday, and he, like all guests, appeared via the Boardwalk Honda hotline. Phillies and Dodgers. We didn't get into your thoughts on the whole Peacock thing, but maybe down the road there, Frank. All right, Frank, appreciate it, man.
Have a good one, Mike.